Good afternoon. A little brief overview of my career history. I've always worked for Samworth Brothers. Tamar Food is a part of Samworth Brothers. Most of you will have heard of Ginsters. I worked at Ginsters for 20 years. I started my life in the laboratory. As the company grew, I then decided to take a position as a technical manager. So I was a technical manager at Ginsters for 10 years and then at Tamar for 10 years. And I've recently changed roles to head up basically the concept to launch process, so from MPD all the way until the product reaches the bakery. I work in a factory, but we call it a bakery. It's one of those things that we, as a business, Samworth Brothers, we tend to call our factories bakeries. It's a little bit more user-friendly. Being a technical manager, unlike Jonathan, I've not had quite as many dealings with foreign travel because when you deal with meat from the UK, you know, Northern Ireland is about as far as I go. I've broken this down into 4 stages. There's the concept side, which is sort of the preliminary work that you do from sort of marketing, that sort of thing, up until you get to the actual development stage. And in very, very broad terms, I would call those the more creative side. So that's where you're looking at ideas and what you want to do going forward and what's in the marketplace. And then you start developing, which again is quite chefy and again quite creative. And then once you have developed a product and it's approved and it's put into the bakery, it's the implementation stage. So that's taking it from maybe a 2 kilo kitchen cook up to 2 tons, 5 tons in the bakery. And then you actually launch a product. And then I would say, sort of going very broadly, that's more scientific. That's where you do your validation work, your allergen work, etc. So you've got sort of 2 sides to everything. So if we start with the concept, this starts around about 12 to 18 months before launch. At the moment we're looking at party food for 2014. So we're looking at food trends. So if you look at food trends, probably next year Brazil is going to be quite big with the World Cup. So there's quite a lot of food trends around. And we also benchmark. So we look at what else is in the marketplace and what's going to be the next big thing. And we also use external companies as well as just looking at what's on the marketplace, because obviously if you look at what's on the marketplace now and then develop it for next year, you're basically developing something similar. We will also look at people like Kantar, Nielsen, who are companies that do a lot of research and marketing that will sort of tell you where the trends are coming in the future. And then we've got event management. So if you take last year, we had the Jubilee. Next year we've got the World Cup. So you have quite a lot of events. And there's also seasonal events. So Halloween is huge these days. It used to be quite small, but it's huge. You've got Christmas, which again is huge, and Valentine's Day and things like that. So you develop some products that are specific for those actual events. You're going to get concepts. Restaurant tour. You go around to all the restaurants, maybe London, Paris, places like that, to see what's people are buying in restaurants at the moment, because that could potentially be a ready meal for next year or a pie for years to come. So again, then that will show you some of the trends that are around. And then new ingredients. Something which we've seen in restaurants recently are ox cheeks. Ox cheeks, gosh, people think, how horrible, but they've been slowly braised. And that's something that could quite easily transfer into a pie in a couple of years' time. Nicely slowly braised for maybe 5 hours with something that could be very much upmarket. And then again, other new ingredients. A few years ago, fresh cranberries were virtually unheard of in the domestic environment. But Delia Smith made I think it was a cranberry and orange sauce, and woe betide, cranberries just flew off the shelves in supermarkets. So although it wasn't necessarily a new ingredient, it was quite new to the domestic market, and then that then became quite important in product as well. And then you've got the TV chefs. Heston Blumenthal, we've all heard of Heston, and with Jonathan, the Waitrose Christmas pudding with the whole crystallised orange in the centre. Big business for Waitrose, I believe, a few years ago. And you've got, Jamie Oliver, people like that. They all give you inspiration. And then you've got TV programmes, MasterChef's on at the moment, and we all sit and watch MasterChef and think, I could do that, I think I could do that. And again, that gives you ideas of what you could potentially make into products in years to come. And then you've got, got Mary and what's he called, Paul Hollywood, the Great British Bake Off. Fantastic. Baking is a huge business now within the food industry. And from my background, I make pies and sausage rolls and pasties. I didn't say that in my introduction. On the last Master Bake, they had a pie that was layered. So I bet you anything, not necessarily from Tamar Foods, but there will be a pie on the marketplace in a supermarket in the next 12 to 18 months that's layered and looks like the pies that were on the Great British Bake Off. And then I've sort of touched on seasonality. You've got your summer eating products. So for us, you've got lighter eating, sort of flans, that sort of thing in the spring and summer. You then get on to this time of the year, the autumn launches, where you have hearty steak pies, steak and kidney puddings, things like that. And then you have the Christmas, the party food, sharing, snacking, that sort of thing. And then you go on to the new year where it's sort of lower fat, reduced calorie, because everybody's had a lot of excesses over the Christmas period and they just want to have a little bit of time to sort of settle down and go on to the healthy side for the new year. And then food exhibitions. These mustn't be underestimated, especially local food exhibitions. Everywhere that you go now, there are little farmers' markets and you'll have a local food fair once a year. Again, you'll find a tremendous amount of inspiration from those sorts of things. So that's the sort of concept side, and that happens between sort of 18 months up to about 9 to 12 months before a product is launched. We then go on to the design and development stage. With everything we have to work to a brief. When you're making thousands and millions of products a year, you want to make them correct, and you have to have some sort of idea of what you're going to do. And this is something where the work you've done through the concept stage and also work with your customers will get a brief. You can either do a brief yourself, you will get one from the customer, or you can work collaboratively for a brief. But it will maybe say, I want a steak pie, I want to have 20% meat in it, and it's got to have a nice rich gravy, it's got to be a dark colour, and it's got to appeal to the family. So you get quite tight criteria in the brief that tell you what you need to do. Otherwise, you'll design products that will never sell. And then you have to think about factory considerations. And if going back to the layered pie that was on the Great British Bake Off, that is, looks fantastic, something like that, but factory-wise might be extremely difficult to actually manufacture. So you'd have to think about how you would do it in a factory environment. And then you would go on to your kitchen development. So you've got a brief and you've decided, right, I'm going to make my steak pie with 20% meat in it. You then fine-tune it. So you look at your stocks, you look at your seasonings, even your pastry. Do you want butter in it? Do you want lard in it? That sort of thing. So there's quite a lot of development, and that's where the chefs come in. So the chefs will actually develop the product. And you want to take into account historical data. You may have done something similar in the past, so you can draw on that previous knowledge of what maybe works and what doesn't work. And then you define a recipe. And, if you look at chefs working and, the master chef and that sort of thing, they'll put a little sprinkle of this in and a pinch of that. When you're actually doing a recipe in our sort of industry, it's really important to log down all of the ingredients and how much you're using. So what you might do is you may still have that, chef will have a pinch of that, but you've got a little pot of salt, for instance, and it may have 100 grams in it. So you keep adding a little bit until it tastes right, and then you weigh the remaining salt. So you know how much you've used. Because, the difference when you make that little 2 kilo pot of sauce up to 5 tons or something like that, a decimal point wrong. So 10 grams of salt instead of 1 gram of salt could make the difference between a product that's inedible and a product that's actually very, very good. So it's very important to weigh all your ingredients and know exactly what you're doing in your recipe. So. And then finally, something that's very dear to every manufacturer's heart, as it is to supermarkets, is cost. You can make the most fantastic product, and chefs can make fantastic products, but you have to make it to a price point. So, if you want your pie that's going to have 20% meat in it, and it's going to feed a family, and it's going to be £4, it's no good to make a product that has £5 worth of ingredients in it. So again, cost is really key. And then there could be some technical challenges. There are 2012 salt targets issued by the FSA, so you have to make sure you abide by those. And also, we have what we call GDAs. If you look on a lot of supermarket packaging, it'll have a little traffic light section to tell you, you've got, 5 grams of fat, and that's 50% of your daily guideline amount. So what you don't want to do is, again, have a product where you're exceeding your overall daily amounts, because a pie could be part of one meal, and if you have up to 5 meals a day, then you don't want to have an excessive amount of any of the calorific or fat, salt, etc. And reheat instructions. That's something which, again, through the development stages, you need to be aware of, because is it going to be microwaved? Is it microwavable? We've recently launched a range with Tesco's that are called Ping, which are microwavable, so we've had to do quite a lot of work on reheat instructions on those, because it's not just bung it in the microwave, because pastry doesn't work very well under those conditions. And again, you put them in the oven, and you want to try and get fairly rigid temperatures and times. We tend to believe a lot of people tend to work at 180 or 200 degrees. So, you don't want to say, well, you should reheat this product at 200 degrees for 5 minutes and then turn it down to 150 for a quarter of an hour. It's got to be something that's quite easy for the consumer to actually do. And then packaging suitability. It's really quite important to have the correct packaging on products. You can have them in cartons. They could be flow wrapped. Different types of market. You can have quite sort of lower end products that are maybe flow wrapped, so your chip shop pies, or you can go up to your very fancy boxes with windows in, so you can see the product. Or do you want a box that has a picture on it? And also, is that suitable for travelling? Going into the consumer's basket as well. So you have to take all these points into consideration when you're developing a product. And then ingredient control. If you're using new ingredients, as Jonathan alluded to, they have to come quite often from approved suppliers. So, you can't just nip to the local Tesco's, Waitrose, Sainsbury's and pick up a jar of something and then put that in a product and expect it to be allowed to be used when you upscale it, because you will quite often have to use ingredients from known suppliers, and they have to be audited by ourselves as well, so that they are both food safe and they produce quality product day in and day out. Consistency is key. And then once you've developed your product and you think you've got the packaging right, you've got your reheat instructions right, everything's fine, it's safe, you have to get it approved by the customer. So that can sometimes lead to a few more tweaks. And then it goes to the implementation stage. This is, once it's been approved by the customer and they say, yes, we want to go with this product, you then upscale it into your bigger batch sizes in the factory. You then look at your HACCP and allergen studies. Obviously, you don't want to introduce new allergens if you can help it. If you do, it has to be validated, and quite a large risk assessment has to take place. And then your nutritional and shelf life. Jonathan was talking about pack copy. We do a specification where we put all of the attributes of the product and where the materials come from, what specification the materials are, what country of origin they are. We then generate an ingredients panel, we generate the nutritional panel, and then reheat instructions, and all of that gets put into what we call a pack copy, which then goes to the design house, which is nominated by the customer, and they will then turn that into the design for that particular customer. And that process can take anywhere from, 8 weeks up to 3 months. And then each artwork comes back through. So the information that you put on your specification and pack copy is key, because that gets transposed onto the actual packaging. So you then check that off, and what you don't want is one of these 4:30 on Friday afternoon calls into Waitrose, Tesco, Sainsbury's or Asda, Marks and Spencer's to say, I've just got some packaging in, I'm launching this product next week, and there's something wrong on the artwork. It can't go out, it's not legal, or there is something that could hamper the launch. That is a real problem for suppliers. So it's really important to make sure all of that is checked through. And that's where the sort of scientific side comes in to all of the implementation. And as I said, new ingredients, they have to be audited, risk assessed, and then we just need to check that, for instance, there isn't, you know, a hidden allergen in the factory that makes any particular ingredients as well. And once again, cost. Every time when you make a product from a 2 kilo up to, say, a ton size, or thousands of product, you will sometimes have to just make little adjustments, fine adjustments, but that will tend to affect the cost. So you, once again, need to keep a very close eye on that all the way through the development process, because, again, you don't want to launch a product that's not going to be viable, or you have to say to the customer, I'm ever so sorry, I can't sell you this pie for £2, I have to sell it to you for £2.05, something like that. And then you may have to have new equipment or new processes. Again, these have to be validated, so you may have to do some process control work. You may have to check that if you've got a new deposit the fill into your pie, that it works within the tolerance that you actually have set, or that the actual equipment manufacturer have set. And that will take quite a lot of time, so you have to do quite a lot of what we call validation work on that. And new processes, making sure they're food safe. So you'll do a lot of testing as well. And again, once you upscale, so you'll go up to your, depending on your factory, it could go from, like I say, 2 kilo size, maybe up to 200 kilos, or up to a ton. And then you make that into pies. You want to take that all the way through as well to packaging, so that you can make sure that it will go through the packaging, go through the machines, that you put them through once they've been packed. And I have experienced many years ago when we were launching a pie, and it had a fantastically varnished cardboard carton that it was in, which was great. So, you know, we were there, and a couple of days before launch, we'd done trials with packaging, which was a big tick. But what we hadn't done is trials on the packaging that had been properly glazed. So we got to launch, and we were putting them through the metal check and checkware, and every single carton slid. So it was going through the wrapping machine. It wouldn't go through the checkware and metal check. So we were there on the day of launch with the technologist, such as Jonathan, on site, not knowing what to do. So we had to quickly find what we call the sticky belt that would actually get it to go through all of the metal check and checkware, so that it was actually anything was detected. And that's where sometimes, you know, we call it being a bit last minute, where packaging comes in just before launch. You need to try and get those packaging trials done earlier, and actually make sure that you've got the carton with all the finishes it should have. And then you travel test it. You might have cartons, and I've launched products that the cartons may look lovely, and they may be slightly different shape. So instead of being a nice square carton, they might have a window and have a concave part of it. Sounds great. You then put it in a case, and you send it through the distribution chain, and it crushes, or it's not suitable. You put a window in, and the little acetate window, and it falls out. Something like that, or it doesn't like the chilled environment that it's in. So again, that's very key. And then you work on the quality standards, the quality attribute sheets. So while you're doing your upscale trials, you will have customers on site as well, and then you will agree your quality standards. These need to be agreed ideally before launch, so that you know on the day of launch exactly what you're packing to and what you're producing to. They're usually pictorial and are at different points throughout the factory. And then you train those quality standards to the factory staff and everyone concerned, because you want to have a product that you make day in and day out and it looks the same. It's really quite important. And I know, you know, sometimes when you go to an upper level, they may say hand finished, and they like it to be a little bit variable, but on the whole they want it to look fairly similar day in and day out, so that it fits the packaging, it fits the outer case, and it fits on the shelf in the supermarket as well. So you then get to the actual launch. So you've got your customer on site, so then they have samples, and we'll take them back for maybe senior people within their business, senior people within our business, and also just maybe general consumers in their businesses, just to have a taste. And then you agree on ongoing quality checks, because there may be something, for instance, on a pie you'd have the piece count of meat maybe that's quite important, so you would agree what your target is and what your tolerances are. And then your lab testing regime. again, Jonathan alluded to, when you launch a product, you want it to be safe. So you've done all your HACCP study, so in theory everything's right, but you then, as a double check, you may say, right, once a month I will send it to the lab for microbiological testing. Or if it's a low-fat product, you might want to send it to the lab for fat analysis on a more regular basis than maybe once every 6 months. You might want to send it every month for the first 12 months until you've got some historical data. And then your factory compliance checks, just to make sure that we issue a recipe, that people are following the recipes, and that if there are any issues with them, you may say fry off the onions for 10 minutes. Well, actually, when they do it in earnest, it might take 7 minutes. So you may just want to check what you actually give to the bakery to use as their recipes. And then once you've launched a product, you may think it's great, and you might be selling quite a few, but you want to look at the sales data, because you may sell some, but they may have wastage in store, or it might not be selling. So if that's the case, within a short period of time, it has to be addressed, because if you haven't got sales, you won't be making any money, and you will be having uneconomic batches, and you will get much more inconsistency when you have small batches of product, which leads on to the consistency. The more you do, the better the consistency. And again, it's very important to have a product that's the same day in and day out. You don't want to buy a pie today that tastes peppery, and tomorrow it tastes salty, and in 3 weeks' time it tastes of something totally different. And again, waste. And waste is both in the factory, so if it's a product that maybe has a high amount of waste, maybe there's a lot of pastry that's used that you can't do anything with, or it's in very small batches and you can only maybe do, I don't know, say a tonne of sauce and you only need 300 kilos a week. Again, you need to look at that. And also waste in store. If the store isn't able to sell products within a certain period of time and they have to sell them at a reduced cost, then that is waste for them. So again, you just need to weigh up all of those elements of waste, because it's not environmentally friendly or economic to produce waste. And then complaints monitoring, that is something which is very key, and it's a KPI for me as a supplier as well as for the supermarkets. If you've got a product and you've suddenly got high complaints on it, or you start to see it trending up, then you need to do something about it, and not just think, oh yeah, it's okay, they'll go away. They won't go away, and people will stop buying the product, and it will fail. So that's basically from concept to launch. There's lots of stages, lots of validation work and scientific work towards the back end, a lot of creative work at the front end. And then if I just go on, there's a team that will deliver this launch, and you have the commercial, so they will talk about, they will sell the product into the customer at a price. You then get the category marketing, which Chris was talking about this morning. Where is it going to sit in the marketplace? Who's it going to be designed for? The NPD, the new product development team, so they tend to be chefs, so they do the nice creative side. Then the process team would take it from a kitchen sample up to a full-scale bakery trial. Technical have input sort of all the way through, specifications, helping to agree standards, quality standards, food safety. Purchasing, again, that's very key, because you have to purchase all your ingredients and your packaging to the right specification from the right suppliers. And then packaging, again, making sure that's suitable fit for purpose and suitable for the product. And then planning, we have to make sure that we plan the product, plan the trials, plan the production each day. Make sure we've got enough production time to do it, and then the production staff who actually make the product day in and day out, and then finally finance, to make sure that it all adds up at the end of the day and everybody is happy with a nice product. And just a little bit about Samworth Brothers. I don't know whether any of you have heard of it. It's not a particularly widely known company. We have 2 geographic hubs, one in Leicester, where we've got Melton Foods, Kettleby Foods, Dickinson and Morris make pork pies, Brooksby Foods who do some ready meals, and we have Samworth Brothers Distribution. You might see the lorries on the road, on the motorways. They're sort of a yellowy, creamy yellow colour. We have Bradgate Bakery that makes sandwiches, Salad Works that actually make ready meals, Blueberry Foods that make desserts, Walkers and Son who make pork pies, and Walkers Midshire Foods who make sausages and cooked meats, And then the Samworth Brothers head office. And in Cornwall, which is where I'm based, we have Tamar Foods, who we make pasties, pies and sausage rolls. We're one of the biggest pie manufacturers in the UK. And we service most of the customers, most of the major supermarkets, so Waitrose, Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Asda, Marks and Spencer's, Co-op. And Duchy Desserts, which is a very small business who do some desserts, obviously. Kenzie Foods, who do a lot of desserts, predominantly for Tesco's. Westwood Labs, who do all of our microbiological testing, and they also do our nutritional testing, our chemical testing, but they farm that out to a third party. And then Ginsters, which I'm sure most of you have heard of, who make pasties, pies, sausage rolls, but they also subcontract out some of their work to other companies in the business, so they do pork pies, sandwiches. I think in time they've also done desserts as well. Just a quick one on Samworth Brothers Industrial Placement Scheme. As your teachers or students, and we've got a scheme that's been running for 18 years now, and it takes on industrial placement students for 12 months, and it comprises of 2 6-month placements in 2 different businesses. It could be Leicester and Cornwall, 2 in Cornwall, 2 in Leicester, whichever. And all roles on placement are real and key to the business. It's not just a student that comes in and makes tea and wanders about for 6 months. They actually do have very, very prescriptive jobs to do. It's something that you can either love the food industry after, hate it, or you may say, right, I'm never going to go into technical, I don't like technical, or I really enjoy technical but don't like production, like marketing, etc. And there is an official website, which I think is student-based, which is called Tasty Jobs in the UK. And we work alongside Discovery graduates for the recruitment of our industrial placement students. And we actually have an assessment centre. And if the students are successful, they will hopefully join Samworth Brothers. And we recruit up to 10 IPs each year. And then once the industrial placement student goes back to university to finish their final year, we will keep in contact with them with a view to them joining Samworth Brothers after graduating. We no longer do a graduate scheme, but we do take on graduates in different roles. That's me finished. Any questions?